All right, very good. We are recording our meeting. The meeting starts at 5:37 on March 8th, Groveland Study Committee. And we're going to take a look at, first thing I'm going to project on our Zoom screen here is the minutes. So just give me a second. We'll get that started in a moment.
Joe, is this supposed to be on the air?
No, this is not on
okay.
the air. Yeah.
I just checked and there was nothing on. So.
Yeah, no.
Okay, just thought I'd ask.
Okay, there you go. So the meeting minute, excuse me, the agenda for tonight, we're going to review the draft, any potential revisions. I hope that we can do live, and then take a look at the memorandum of final committee recommendations. I'm going to go through that, and then we'll like to take perhaps we'll take some votes to approve both of them with any revisions that are done live here tonight. So. Now, what I did omit, and that was done in error, I did omit on the agenda the approval of the meetings from February 16th, but we'll have to pick that up at a future meeting. So, okay, so sorry about that. That was something that I overlooked. So hold on a second. So I want to bring, if you'll allow me a little bit of discretion here, I want to bring to everyone's attention this document right here. I think this is probably more important than the actual draft. All right, can everybody see that? The memorandum of final committee recommendations?
No, I can't see it.
No.
Okay. All right, let me get that. Let me project that. And there it is. Okay, there it is. Okay, terrific.
Okay.
Okay, very good. All right, so I think that the at my March 29th meeting, should I be invited back, then I'm gonna open with this, and this will effectively address two big issues here. One of them is changes to the document. And these are changes to the document subsequent to my presentation on March 1st, which attempts to address some of the legal issues that were presented. And then the second one, I think, this is probably the most important thing. At the end of the day, I think everybody would agree with me that the Board of Selectmen need to take ownership of this project. And so a couple of ownership type issues is, and we want to help them. We're here to support them, and we're very eager to do that, and have been working for 26 weeks, it seems like, or 25 weeks, or 24, somewhere in that range, in doing that. So one of the first things I think I'm going to bring to their attention, and I hope they all have an opportunity to read this, is they need to complete a financial leadership team with the town administrator. If we're going to implement the town administrator, who is that person going to be working with? And we call that, I'd like to call that the financial leadership team. Now Selectman Watson in particular, and Selectman Naves also had made mention about, okay, well, what is this going to cost us? So number 6 answers that without doing an extended salary survey or benefit analysis, which was mentioned by Selectman O'Neill. We drilled it right down to here. Based on who we've interviewed and the research that we've done, it seems to me that the financial leadership team is going to cost us some money here. One of them is we need to hire a full-time accountant. The salary range is between $68,000 and $78,000. We also need to hire an assistant treasurer collector, also full-time. Salary range between $48,000 and $58,000. We recommend that the Board of Selectmen complete a financial study so that we can accommodate the following 3 positions: a town administrator between $110,000 and $130,000, a full-time accountant, as mentioned, between $68,000 and $78,000, and a full-time treasurer collector between $48,000 to $58,000.
Oh, excuse me, Joe. That says full-time treasurer collector. Should that say full-time assistant treasurer collector?
Full-time treasurer. Oh, did I say?
Yeah, that's low money for a full-time treasurer collector.
For assistant, okay. That
Up
was a
above you
typo.
say assistant, and then those 3 bullets, it should say assistant.
Okay, so that's a typo. I need to fix that typo. somewhere between now and town meeting, I hope Board of Selectmen will do a financial study. And they need to do it in two parts. What is this gonna cost for every taxpayer if we fill these positions? And more importantly, what is it gonna cost the taxpayers if we have to implement a contingency plan because we can't fill these positions? One of the problems that we have discovered is that the market right now is not favorable to our town. It's very difficult to find quality people to fill these positions. So two conditions we're going to be confronted with. Number one, it might be hard to find people, and we may have one or two of these positions unfilled. And number two, if we do fill them, it's probably going to be on the high end of the pay scale. And I think that John Christopher will probably support me on that in our discussion with one of our public officials recently. All right, let me see what's going on with Andrew. Hold on, please. Let me send him another email. Go to email, please. All right. So any comments on that, please? Any questions, comments?
Yes, one comment, Joe.
Go ahead, please.
Item 5, section 5, item, no, I think it was section 5, item 4. I
Mhm.
think we haven't quite resolved that yet, have we? Whether it's 7 or 14 days?
No.
We're on the memorandum, John, not the document.
we're
I
on-
thought,
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought the memo refers to that.
Well, it does, I think.
And we're talking about that item in the memo.
So tell me why you want to bring it down to bring it up to 14, and I believe it's 7, and I have not had the time to check. I believe it's 7 because that is what the personnel bylaw or the personnel procedures manual says.
Because I understood the selectmen were concerned about needing more time.
Yeah. Let me just say this. If it's a serious personnel matter and the employee wants to get legal counsel, he's going to be very hard pressed from personal experience of getting legal counsel within 7 days. He'll probably need a 14-day continuance to begin with.
That's what I thought.
All right, let me go in there and change that to 7. I'm sorry, to 14. Can you tell me again where it is, please? We'll do a live right now.
Section 5, item 4.
Is this sauce done?
In the document or in the?
Yes, in the document,
In the draft?
in the draft, correct.
Okay, hold on. Let me go to it right now. All right, let's get to it. I'm sorry, section what, John, please, kindly?
5, I think it's 5,
It's stuck.
section 4. Number 4.
Here it is. Yes, I got it. Okay, great. All right. All right, we'll get to 14. That's twice. Okay, great. Thank you. We're all set
And
there.
there's two entries, Joe. I think there are 2 entries.
Yeah, I did the both. Yes, I saw
Okay,
them.
fine.
I saw the 7 or 14. We're
Okay.
good. Okay.
Okay, very good.
So, now, let me continue with this memorandum. Number 8, the presentation at the town meeting should be led by 1 or 2 Board of Selectmen members. The Board of Selectmen must be perceived as taking ownership of this proposal and deliver it at town meeting. Again, we're absolutely passionately in support of the Board of Selectmen. We feel that we have fulfilled our charge. We hope that we've earned their trust and brought them a quality product here, a final solution, if you will, a draft that they can deliver. But we can't go up there and be the presenters. This is not the Joe and Betty and John Osborne, John Christopher, Andrew Cox, and Mike Dempsey project. This is a Board of Selectmen proposal to the town. Our capacity as advisors will continue to support them, and certainly I will be available at town meeting to address any challenges or questions. Powers and Sullivan, number 9, this is really important, and town council should receive a copy of this memo as well as the draft that we're going to vote tonight by tomorrow morning. It should be immediately transmitted because time is of the essence. Since a question about the legality of our recommendations and the content of our draft has been called into question, as well as an assertion that our draft constructs a scenario that will expose our town to fraud, both of these issues should be explicitly addressed by both the auditors and the town council immediately, in my opinion. Their recommendation should be fully integrated into the draft. So if they come back and say, yes, we see some problems here, you need to change your draft, or they give us a certificate of approval, we need to know that. Should changes be required, this committee will convene a meeting to modify the draft on March 22nd. That is a critical date because that puts us 1 week next Board of Selectmen meeting, which is going to be March 29th. And you'll see in number 10, on March 29th, the committee requests that the matter to be placed on the Board of Selectmen meeting agenda for final disposition. That is the night that the Board of Selectmen will make a final decision whether we're going to move forward or not to issue at town meeting 2021. And that's what this draft does. This memorandum does. It explains the changes that we made, but the actions to be taken by the Board of Selectmen are absolutely critical. They're timely, and they need to, the Board of Selectmen really need to be aware of them and to, be aware of the time pressures should they want to move forward. Remember, they gave us a charge, and anecdotally and officially, they said, we want to get this ready for a town meeting this year. Can you help us? Yes. Well, here we are. We've delivered. So now they need to now take the baton and move forward. The most critical part is right here. Need to talk to the lawyers, need to talk to the auditors.
Joe,
Go ahead.
I don't know what the feedback is. I believe the town attorney is the place. I think that the auditors are not on contract to evaluate the structure of our town government, except when they are in the performance of an audit. And we have documentation in our audits over all these years that even with the structure we had in the past, we should have a fraud assessment risk. So they're just going to say the same thing again. I don't see any point in doing that over again. I believe you addressed the only concern that made any sense to me was that by allowing a town manager to approve the warrants without our review, you've removed an important.
You can't do that as a matter of law anyhow. That's why I changed the language.
Thank you. Yeah. So my thought is don't muddy the waters by asking for all different people that normally are not involved in a warrant article to change our government. It is our town attorney, only our town attorney who now, after we review it, if we decide, yes, it's going forward, it goes to town attorney.
The only thing I question about the town attorney, and I'd question myself too, he's probably a crackerjack when it comes to legal matters, but this is more of a, like, if you were a CPA, you could spot something that maybe a lawyer would miss.
Well, except that I feel that when we changed to the financial department, the town attorney was heavily involved in that. I
I
mean,
think it was just approval to make sure we could do it in a legal manner.
right. I think that's all we need really at this point. Because understand that even with our current structure,
Mhm.
we have a fraud risk and we've known it. We know it.
Well, let me put it this way, Kathy, because have an auditing background. And
Yeah.
I'll try to reduce it to, my understanding of fraud prevention from an auditing standpoint. We don't have a situation now where the person who writes the checks also signs the checks. I mean, that's a basic principle of preventing fraud.
Correct. But I'm trying to remember exactly where in the audit report is. The thing is the town should always, we're always going to be susceptible to fraud at some level. Everybody is. Individually.
Why there's an audit.
But that's why we went to annual audits to to keep a cap on things, and to catch things quickly, but to do, if we move to a new structure, or if we don't, whoever is next hired as our permanent should follow the directive of the audit report and do a fraud assessment, just to see, if you have different people taking in money, as we do in our town, and then bringing it to our town hall. That's
Well, we-
open to fraud. I mean, in a sense, it's all those little things, but it's not, I think the bigger picture of checks and balances is there with the town administrator and is there with a strong financial
Well,
director.
we do have a provision in the bylaw that requires the town administrator within 2 months to huddle with the town
Yeah,
accountant
I saw that.
and the auditors and come up with a financial procedures manual.
Correct. And that
Which
would be a
I
good,
think John and I at one point, a few months ago, looked at financial procedures manual that can go on multi-pages. So it can be drafted a lot of protections.
right.
And that may be better than just, restructuring. Of course, honesty is always the primary prevention, but
Right. I mean, I think I look at the restructure as kind of the next natural step beyond the Board of Selectmen continuing to dump more administrative duty on a finance director, because that's what we're going to do.
no, I think in the conversation I had with a public official
She can have a ball.
from another town, they have a town accountant and assistant treasurer collector, and his role is really more just overseeing the budget. The nuts and bolts of running the finances is basically in those two people.
Which is fine. I think overall running the budget is a big job. And we're seeing firsthand this year what happens when we don't have somebody with enough hours on it. It's becoming very difficult for us. And we don't want to do this again. So I think normally we'd be out to look for a full-time finance director. What's held us back is knowing that this article is coming forward and not wanting to hire someone and then town meeting to say, we already hired somebody. Why'd you do that if you want to do this? So, it's caught in between the rock and a hard place here. Trying to make it work as best we can. And I guess I have some faith that, we have a pretty solid accountant. So I feel like that end is okay. We've contracted out the treasurer function to the best of my understanding. And I'm going to check on that a little further, make sure that that's actually
So
being done.
if you read the statute which appoints the town accountant, one of the town accountant's principal duties is to investigate every warrant article to make sure it isn't fraudulent.
Correct. The whistleblower. That's who it is. The whistleblower.
He or she is
Yep.
exactly that.
Yep. No, you want that person to be a whistleblower. I guess my question is, it sounds like now assistant treasurer collector, which is great because we have that position. We've funded that position before. We understand that position. Is there a treasurer collector then?
Well, that's the issue. It'd be great to have treasurer, a collector, and a town accountant, but can the town afford it?
No, we cannot. We cannot. Not at this, especially not this year. So yeah, that would be the difficulty. So can the assistant treasurer collector can be bonded? Obviously, they can be bonded. Do we still need by statute somebody to bear the name treasurer collector?
Well, the way the finance director bylaw is written now, of course, that was by special acts legislation.
Yeah.
Which means we could override other forms of statutes that provide for a treasurer.
John, we're having trouble hearing you. If you can get a little bit
Okay,
your microphone.
the treasurer collector position was rolled into the finance director position where he assumed those responsibilities. And
I was right.
so we basically, we'd have to say that the town administrator will perform the duties of a treasurer.
As an oversight. Yeah, that's what I assume. I mean, that makes sense. Denise was essentially overseeing our assistant treasurer collector, who was very, very capable and doing a fantastic job until she got stolen by West Newbury. So, you know, I think we have that model.
May I interrupt here?
Go ahead.
I would like to say we're going off track a little bit. I know this is your issue, but I think we're not addressing the document, which is important. Can we move on, please? The nuts and
Okay,
bolts of this
so-
issue seems to be getting us waylaid, and we're not resolving anything.
So I want to make a comment. Kathy, this is going to be, hopefully, if it gets voted tonight, is going to be a recommendation. The Board of Selectmen have discretion as to whether or not they want to engage with the town council or Powers and Sullivan. I believe Powers and I'm gonna be very direct. I've never been on a committee. I've been on this committee for a long time, and I've never served with a finer group of people. And we've committed ourselves significantly here. But with that said, when it's been suggested that we have created a set of events with a conflict between our bylaw and the finance bylaw that will most likely create a legal issue with the Attorney General's office, I think that
That was one person's opinion, Joe.
I understand that, whatever the opinion is, the opinion also has the strength of swaying
Oh, I understand.
selectmen. So
I understand.
I feel it's in the best interest of the Board of Selectmen to get clarity on the issues that were presented in terms of whether or not we've created a legal problem with the combination of the bylaw and the town and the.
Well, at the last meeting with the selectmen that I watched, you were offered the opportunity to sit down with Powers and Sullivan.
That's correct, and I'll maintain that.
And I think that if you sit down with them, ask them specific questions, instead of them reviewing everything in a vacuum, we may be able to come up with some level of comfort that moving forward, we're doing okay, or that we may have to make some changes.
That's fine.
I totally agree. I think section 3 is vital. And this is the one Achilles heel of the document. So if section 3 is the issue, then Joe, you need to talk to the lawyers and get that straightened out.
Absolutely. Thank you for your support.
accountants,
That's what I.
The auditors.
The auditor's right.
Correct. Thank you. All right. Well, again, it's a recommendation, and I think there isn't anybody involved in this process that doesn't have the best interest of the town. But, you know, when things come up, we need to address them and be very clear, and we need to be very forthright about them. So we want to help the Board of Selectmen present to the town meeting with something that we're sure and that they're going to be sure is right for the town and is legally sound. It's not an unreasonable request. Any questions so far? Any comments other than what we've just reviewed? All right, so let's go to the, let's take a look at the actual, so the changes here, maybe John and John can maybe go through these, or anything that you think we should change or address.
Okay, I'd like to address the issue.
Yes, please.
Joe, you recommended, and I thought it was a good idea to take out the footnotes and put it in an Appendix B, and I totally agree. However, we did omit by mistake, I think, that the appendix, we now have 2 appendices, Appendix A and Appendix B. The Appendix B is notified as acknowledged and in bold. However, the Appendix A it just says appendix, so we need to change that to Appendix A and make it bold. That's in that's in the end of section 2, the very last
All right,
sentence in section 2.
Okay, hold on. Let's make that change right now.
The Appendix B, I would assume, is for the benefit of.
John, you need to speak closer to the mic.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Appendix B, I would assume, with the intent that it just be directed towards the Board of Selectmen and, you know, to help town council out too. And it was mostly written because we were getting signals that a duality of a position per se town administrator / financial director, one person holding two positions, somehow was illegal, which I do not agree with. And I put all that stuff in there to make the argument that it isn't. It wasn't so much directed towards the dual position as being a possible avenue of fraud, just the per se that one person can hold two positions, one of which is only a temporary position. And it's done all the time in government all over the state. Unless your charter or your organizing document has some type of prohibition written into it that it can't be done. So I don't know if we need it attached, hopefully when it goes to town meeting, I wouldn't want to see that attached.
Oh,
I
okay.
agree.
All right. Well,
I totally agree. We don't need Appendix B in the town warrant. And because I think it'll only cause confusion. So we've got really this document with referencing Appendix A and Appendix B at this juncture, going to the selectmen and town council. After that, we withdraw the Appendix B and change the wording back to appendix, just simple. So it's really two minor changes, that's all.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Joe?
That makes perfect sense. I put that language in there. And again, the word processing, the Board of Selectmen are not going to copy our work here. They're going to funnel everything through their own word processing. So as long as we're being clear here, like I've done here, I think that's a great idea. That's good thinking. I appreciate you guys for thinking of that. All right. Good.
I have no other reservations on the document. I've gone through it several times, looked for all the errors, and I thought I'd got them all until this morning. And then I've missed the Appendix A. Okay, well, there you go.
Good. Very good. Very good. All right, so actions to be taken by the Board of Selectmen. We have those. And then these changes, any other changes, any other details that maybe John, Christopher may want to bring up based on, again,
I pointed out that spelling error to you before the meeting
besides the spelling,
began.
I fixed that. So these are the changes to the draft document subsequent to my presentation at March 1st, which I think substantially responds to some of the concerns that were expressed. So I like that part that we've been able to respond and to address those concerns. So any other thoughts? I think Bill O'Neill, you're on, I believe. Do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, my first comment is I just want to thank everyone that's been involved with this. I know how much time away from your families a project like this can be, and the commitment you've all made to move forward in this form of government is, well, I just want to thank you. I don't have the words to express really my gratitude
Thank
to
you.
all of you for all you've done. I think you've produced an extraordinary document. As I said to Joe, the only thing I could find was that, from an accounting background that I have, dealing with the auditors, there's always that control issue with the separation of duties to make sure that there's, the controls are in place to make sure that, a person can't buy something, write the check, and then issue the credit later on to get the money back, so that there's no
Hanky-panky.
yeah, there's no room for any kind of that maneuverability with anyone. And that's the only thing that I saw that could be a problem. And that's why I said maybe the auditors would be the best source. And typically the auditors have legal counsel somewhere at the disposal that they can bounce that off of too. But to avoid a material deficiency or material weakness on our next audit, I thought we should get the answers now. It'd save a lot of heartache later. But other than that, I think you've done a tremendous job. And if there was when we start the volunteer of the month again, you're all on board.
Does that mean you get drafted for something else?
Yeah, that means,
Yes, you bet.
here comes another
Yes,
child.
that's how it works. That's how it works. Now you're catching on.
Yeah,
Well,
I know.
Listen, you know what they say, right? No good deed ever goes unpunished.
I know that so well.
Okay.
So
Bill, you
true.
bring- Bill,
So
you bring,
true.
Bill, you bring up a very good point. What we don't want to see is that we deliver this over the goal line at town meeting, and then subsequent to that, we discover that we have a problem with the Attorney General's office or the auditors or town council. You've got to get it all cleaned and fixed if it needs to be fixed before you put it on the floor of
Right.
town meeting. So,
The last thing we want is to go into one of those lousy NFL referees that throw the
Exactly.
yellow flag. It goes to the review booth for 27 hours, and then they come back and say no touchdown.
so spending time away from family was a problem, but spending most of it with John Osborne was really burdensome. Let me just,
I don't believe that. I
I
spent 4
second
years
that.
on,
I
I
just want to
spent
put
4
that on
years on
public
Capitol
record.
with John, and I found him extremely entertaining. It was some of the 4 years of my life.
It's been a great bunch of people to work with. It's been a pleasure. So, all right, well, I would like to, would anybody like to move to vote for either one of these documents? And
I move that. I move that.
I
Accept the document.
think for the record, we should name the document and have a very clear written vote, and we should do it separately, not both of them at the same time. So if anybody would like to make a motion for either one first.
The one,
Go ahead,
Okay.
John. You make
no,
the
no,
motion.
no, it's all right. You
Go ahead, John.
go, you go.
I make a motion that we approve the memorandum written by Joe to the selectmen as modified tonight.
Okay, do I have
I
a
second that.
seconded by John? Any further discussion?
Oh, you take
How do Andrew, how do you vote?
yes.
Betty, how do you vote?
Yes.
John Osborne, how do you vote?
Yes,
John Christopher, how do you vote?
Yes,
Mike Dempsey, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous and passed. Do I have a motion for moving the audited March 2021 final draft as amended this evening?
so
I
moved.
make that motion to approve.
Second,
Seconded by John Christopher. Andrew, how do you vote?
Yes.
Betty, how do you vote?
Yes.
John Osborne, how do you vote?
Yes,
John Christopher, how do you vote?
yes.
I'm sorry, Mike Dempsey, how do you vote?
Yes.
By the way, please record that I abstained from the first vote and I abstained from the second vote. So that first vote was not unanimous. Please correct that. So the measure passes. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? So since we do have,
We got a question from Kevin Pecos.
yes, please. Kevin?
First of all, hi, everybody on the committee. It's the first time I think I've met some of you. And just wanted to echo the congratulations from Bill and I think the other board members last week for all the hard work that you've put into this. And I know from many years in government myself that it's a labor of love, but commendations to all of you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Did take the time to read all of the different drafts and made extensive comments last week, and I will not repeat comments I've already offered, but I will offer this based on the changes to the draft document, and I don't know how some of these comments are at this point since you've already voted it, but on the changes to the draft document subsequent to Board of Selectmen presentation on March 1, 2021, item 4, it reads in section 6, added language that if the town reorganizes the finance department, then the treasurer and collector or a combination of both are appointed independently by the Board of Selectmen, and they are subject to written, etc. I'm not sure that there is a complete understanding that, and I'm reading from your current draft which I think is the one you're amending. So I believe in your current draft that will go forward, there is still language that requires the town administrator to simultaneously function under the provisions of the new town administrator bylaw, as well as 2-36A, the Finance, Department of Finance and Budget. That bylaw makes the town administrator the treasurer and the collector, the HR director, the finance director, etc. I've made that point before. Now, during the pendants, there is no article that I've heard of yet, which is being offered to repeal 2-36A. So presumably, if this passes by the legislature, 2-36A will also remain active for some time, requiring a single individual to function in all of those offices. Now, I applaud you because number one to your changes to the draft document has cured the concern regarding internal control. And I don't believe you any longer have to talk to the audit company because by giving this authority to approve the warrant back to the selectmen, you have cured the internal control problem. Because at this point, there is another set of eyes looking at the bill and payroll warrants in addition to the person who originates them, funds them, and pays them, and that cures the defect. I don't think in passing that this is the best solution, but it appears from the language in this document that you also realize this needs further improvement, and I would applaud you for recognizing that. However, the fundamental issue still exists, and recall, Joe, I identified for you and the committee's inspection 2 issues with respect to the simultaneous holding of the town administrator powers and duties, as well as the finance director powers and duties under 2-36A. And here's the fundamental problem. One person cannot be recruited, and I want to underscore that with a bright line, cannot be recruited who has the simultaneous training and experience to be a decent town administrator and also be a treasurer and collector. That is simply unrealistic, if not indeed totally impossible. Now, it appears that in recognition of that comment I made at the selectmen's meeting, you added point 4 on the changes to the draft document, wherein you have someone else appointed by the selectmen, presumably, to hold the title of treasurer and collector. The fundamental
Or
problem,
assistant, I think we're talking.
the fundamental problem is the selectmen are not allowed to do that under 2-36A. You have required in the town administrator bylaw that the town administrator and he or she alone function as the finance director pursuant to the provisions of 2-36A. That means that the town administrator must, and there is no ambiguity, there is no escape clause, there is no power by the selectmen to do anything other than what 2-36A requires in addition to this bylaw. So the selectmen's hands will be tied. They appoint the town administrator, who will also be the treasurer, the collector, the finance director, the purchasing officer, and the HR director. I cannot stress enough, and I offer you the perspective of 45 years as a public official, from a member of a board of selectmen to a 42-year town administrator. I've been an HR director, I've been a treasurer, I've been a collector, I've been a water sewer superintendent. You will not find a single person who has the training to be the treasurer, the collector, and the town administrator. Therefore, the scenario you will have when the selectmen hire that town administrator and they say to that individual, you are the title holding treasurer and collector. It is unlikely that anybody will know how to be a town administrator and a treasurer collector. So what are you going to have? You're going to have the potential for a disaster, folks, because the person holding title to the treasurer and collector doesn't know how to do it. They simply don't know how to do it. So I don't know how many different ways I can say this. The only cure to this problem, it doesn't matter if you have the selectmen be the appointing authority for the treasurer collector, because they only have one person they can appoint, the town administrator. That's it. Because of the interoperability of the 2 bylaws, that's the situation you've created. So if you are fortunate enough to find somebody to serve as town administrator who even has a modicum of skill at treasurer collector, which I doubt very much you will find. I do
Well,
recruiting. I do
Kevin, no,
recruiting.
may I interrupt for just a second? This is John
Sure.
Christopher, Kevin.
Sure.
I heard you at the meeting the other day, last week. And I know you recommended that we get rid of the 236A, 2-36A.
Yes.
Simultaneously, well, with enacting this bylaw. And 236A, since it's a special legislation, is obviously going to take 9 months to a year perhaps to get rid of it. That's why we wrote that section into the bylaw where the selectmen will, at some point in time, be able to appoint an assistant treasurer, collector.
Well, but you see,
But how do
they
we? how do we
can't.
solve the
They
problem,
can't.
right?
That's the fundamental problem, John. 236A binds their hands.
Yeah, but how do we?
They don't, they
moving
can't
forward,
appoint
how do-
someone else as the
yeah, but
treasurer
moving forward, How
collector.
do we solve the problem right now?
I'm sorry?
Moving forward, how do we solve the problem?
You can solve the problem in one way and in one way only. You must repeal 236A.
So we
because
can't even
that-
enact the bylaw until we do that. Is that
Well,
what
you
you're
can
telling us?
enact the, remember, a general bylaw can be enacted pursuant to the provisions of statute without any approval by the legislature.
No, I
It does have to
understand
go-
that.
Right, it does have to go to the Attorney General for approval. Now, the 2-36A is a special act, so it can only be repealed by special act. So town meeting has to vote, petition the legislature, and the legislature appeals it. So if you were to pass the town administrator bylaw, let's say April of this year, the Attorney General returns it back 30 to 90 days later, because the Attorney General's office that reviews bylaws, other than personnel bylaws, takes 30 to 90 days to return them because a lot hit them at the same time. During the pendency of that approval, if you simultaneously, right after this TA bylaw, were to put in a article which repeals 2-36A, you might get lucky in that 90-day window and repeal 2-36A. As you say, John, not likely, but it is certainly possible.
What happens if we can't get it done, though? Will the Attorney
Well,
General, in
that's-
your opinion, deep
So
six?
then what's going to happen on the day the Attorney General returns approval of this bylaw? I mean, by the way, because this is a general bylaw, as you know, it's not effective until it's approved, as opposed to a zoning bylaw, which is retroactively effective. So on the day this gets approved, presumably the Board of Selectmen would then go out with an advertisement. That's going to take, before the board gets the advertisement out, takes resumes, appoints a recruiting committee, you're going to have another 3 or 4 months. So again, that would be 3 or 4 months on top of the 3 months while this is being approved, where you might be able to get 2-36A repealed if you have a warrant article that asks the voters to do so. So you might have the opportunity before you appoint the TA to have 2-36A repealed. If you don't, here's the scenario that you will be faced with on that day that you appoint your town administrator. You will say, congratulations, Mr. Administrator. You are now the town administrator, and by operation of this second bylaw, you are the collector, treasurer as well, finance director, et cetera, et cetera. You will then be telling this town administrator, who presumably would have little to no training as a treasurer collector, that they are now the treasurer collector. Now you can appoint an assistant treasurer collector, and in point of fact, we have one on the staff now who is training, and I am teaching her a great deal. And I think she's going to be a terrific assistant. The problem is assistant treasurer collectors have a limited skill level with respect to the full scope of treasurer collector duties. That is why assistant treasurer collectors make 45 odd thousand and fully qualified treasurer collectors make 70 to 90 because they only have a partial skill set. Now, if the TA doesn't have the ability to be the treasurer collector, and I would seriously ask you, where are you going to find a town administrator who can be a treasurer collector? Because I'm one of them, and there's only a few of us in the state, and it's only because I happen to have been a treasurer collector, during the course of my 45-year career. But they're rare individuals to find that can do all 3 jobs. And so at the time you appoint this town administrator, you're going to ask them to be the treasurer collector. They're not qualified. $20 million of the town's money passes through the treasurer and the collector's hands. The collector collects it, the treasurer spends it. You cannot have an unqualified person in that job. It is imperative that this be recognized by the committee and corrected before you create this conundrum, which will be for Groveland a disaster. Now, I think the fourth time I've said this, and I respectfully would say to you, I hope you are listening this time, because if this proposal goes forward in its current form, and you do not have an article to strike 2-36A, then you are going to have the requirement that the town administrator serve as the treasurer collector, and they won't be able to do so with any degree of training or integrity. They simply can't do it. And by the way, if you have a treasurer collector who has the training to be a real treasurer collector, I guarantee you equally that they do not have the training and the skill and the experience to be a town administrator. It's axiomatic. They are different professions. A treasurer collector, as I said, makes $70,000 to $90,000. That's the going wage in Massachusetts. A town administrator makes somewhere between 90 and you name your price. They're up to $250,000 now.
May I interrupt, sir? If you are suggesting if we put on the warrant, the essentially squashing the 236A financial director, sorry, the financial
Bylaws.
bylaw, thank you, then this will solve the problem temporarily, is that correct?
It will solve the problem permanently.
Can
Because
we?
then, well, let me answer your question, because then the statutes, Massachusetts law takes over. And that
Okay,
provides for the selectmen to appoint a treasurer.
procedurally, I'm concerned about the procedure here.
Sure.
Can we now move to the selectmen and recommend that financial bylaw be stricken? Essentially, based on your recommendation, should we do that, indeed do that?
In my opinion, not only must you recommend to the selectmen the inclusion of an article which would strike 2-36A, but further, and equally as imperative, is you must remove all references to 2-36A from the town administrator bylaw. Because during the pendency of the period of time when the town administrator bylaw is passed and approved by the AG, and the date at a later date when the legislature would strike 2-36A, during that period of time, which could easily be months, you are going to have this conundrum. Moreover, let me mention one other thing. Because right now the selectmen don't know going forward if we're going to have a chief financial officer with an assistant treasurer and an assistant collector, or whether we're going to have a town administrator with a full-time treasurer and a full-time collector, the selectmen can't act to appoint a treasurer and collector. They can't do it because the bylaw is going to tell them, if it stays in effect 2-36A, that they've got to give the town administrator that. So do you know what we're doing right now? We have a temporary treasurer collector who we are paying $2,500 a week because that's the going rate for an interim treasurer collector to actually perform it. And we have to continue paying $2,500 because of the confusion created by these two conflicting bylaws. The selectmen have no choice because somebody has to perform the duty of the treasurer collector. I'm the chief financial officer, but I function much more as a town administrator. And there simply isn't time to get both jobs done. So the board's only option is to hire an interim consultant to do that work. And it's costing us $2,500 a week. And it's going to keep doing that until such time as we can get this resolved.
I recall my only involvement with special acts legislation from the town standpoint was when we enacted the bylaw for the finance director in '98. And I know it took a good 9 to 10 months to get that done. And I don't know what the legislature during the pandemic, how they're moving now. And it seems to me that perhaps, and I'm just thinking out loud, I'm not in favor of this, that perhaps we should just wait till we repeal the special acts legislation and then go forward with a bylaw.
I agree.
Here's what you
I
can
agree,
do.
John. That looks the sensible way approaching.
And
I
and let me
hate to
just,
do, I hate to do this because it means a delay every year.
well, let me
Well, it
just
actually
back up.
doesn't. If I
Let me
could
back up.
suggest, if I could suggest it doesn't mean a delay, because here's why. Without 2-36A, if you could sweep that aside and get rid of that special act, you would default automatically back to Massachusetts general law, principally chapters 39, 40, 41, and 44. And in 41 in particular and 39, there are provisions that lay out the selectmen's authority to appoint a treasurer, a collector, and a town administrator. Now, the weakness of appointing a town administrator pursuant to statute is that the statute does not delineate the duties of the town administrator. It does delineate the duties of the treasurer collector, so that's all buttoned up. You'd be fine there. You wouldn't have a finance director, but frankly, ladies and gentlemen, in a town your size, you do not need a finance director. That is vast overkill. You really do need a town administrator, and that's why the universal form of government for communities your size and communities much bigger is town administrator, treasurer, collector, town accountant. That's the universal form. And one point, Joe, you had asked me, you had said in the footnotes to your document, a lot of documentation, I think, John, you might have done being an attorney, satisfying the concern that a town administrator can simultaneously hold a CFO title. I never disputed that. Please understand, I never
Okay.
disputed it.
We
What I
got a report
disputed-
that they thought we were doing something illegal, so I wanted to address the
No,
issue.
what I disputed was the practicality, what was being suggested was that in communities like Georgetown, and I know the TA there very well, and the TA in Topsfield, was that because they possess both the town administrator and the chief financial officer title, that's the same thing that you created. And it would be, except that you also have 2-36A, which requires them to not just be the CFO, but requires them to be the treasurer and the collector. In Georgetown, in point of fact, he has a full-time treasurer collector. He does not have the treasurer collector duties. He has a CFO title, and it's just an honorarium. It means nothing. And in the world of town administrators, lots of them have chief financial officer in their title, but it's an honorarium unless, because the CFO means nothing in and of itself. It's not even in statute. If you accompany the CFO with a description of the duties, and in that list of duties, it says you will hold the title of treasurer and collector, then statutorily, you fall back onto the statutes that say what treasurers and collectors do. And that's what you're required to perform. So in Georgetown, yeah, he's got the CFO title. I talked to him.
Okay,
but he
hang
doesn't
on.
have the duties.
Joe, I've got to leave. I need to say this. Your recommendation then is that we have to expunge the for financial bylaw from the document, which means that that's going to take some time, and then modify the language so as to circumvent any difficulties that are created because of that.
Yes.
And that's going to be that's going to delay us again. So I'm concerned that this is a suggestion at the very last minute and creating a real problem. I am now leaving. I have to go. Thank you.
Okay.
Joe, would you point out to your colleague, please, that I first raised this in an email to the committee at least 2 months ago. So it isn't a suggestion.
I don't know what to press, Val. You
And by the way, you can have a town administrator while, if you don't pass the town administrator bylaw and you get rid of 2-36A and it takes some time, you can have a town administrator anytime you want one because you can appoint them subject to chapter 41. It gives you the right statutorily to have a town administrator.
Well,
What you don't have without the bylaw is the description of duties. But the selectmen could take all this wonderful work that you've done, and the selectmen could give that to the town administrator by virtue of the job description. Then you could come back later after 2-36A is terminated with no possibility of overlap, and you could pass your bylaw And at that point, you could give teeth to the town administrator form with the actual duties that it possesses.
Well, I realized in doing some research, that Georgetown, in fact, has a town administrator, but no bylaw. But what they did, the selectmen created their own regulations, which laid out his duties.
Right, yeah.
And I noticed in Wenham, the fellow who is there posted his contract online, and that reads like a bylaw.
Yeah, and I think, John, what you guys correctly identified is that a selectman contract giving powers and duties is not really giving powers and duties, because any board of selectmen can change it at any meeting anytime they want. Whereas a bylaw, the selectmen are required to abide by. And so when you describe the duties, you make the position of town administrator much stronger, because you tell them what they're supposed to do, and it's not subject to the board of selectmen is changing. That can only go back to town meeting. So, but my point is, in the temporary period of time when 2-36A would be repealed and you would bring your TA bylaw back, the selectmen can hire a town administrator, no problem at all, under Chapter 41. And then they can give it the powers and duties that you yourselves have laid out, if that's what the selectmen want. And then you can come back in the fall and pass your bylaw. And at that point, between the passage of the bylaw and the time it'd take the AG to review it and approve it, you probably would have already had 2-36A repealed to be darn close to getting it repealed. And remember, by the way, you got a powerful tool on your side. You got Senator Tarr, who is the Senate Minority Leader, is very close to the governor, and he might be able to, and Brad Jones, who actually I grew up with, I'm sorry, Senator Tarr's the whip, Brad's the Minority Leader. They can probably get this pushed through pretty quickly for you. And I've seen the legislature on home rule petitions where there's some duress involved and some public purpose. They can actually get it done within 60 days if they call in some favors and they got the governor's help for engrossment. So I would say to you that you've got a reasonably good chance of doing everything you want to do, but avoiding what could really be a destabilizing situation where you get an unqualified person holding the title of treasurer.
Well, it's not only that, I just see it's almost a catch-22.
It is. That's exactly what it is, John. Yep, a catch-22.
And so can I just say that this also suggests that rather than having the town administrator with the accountant and the assistant treasurer, now you're talking about a treasurer. So it's going to change the budget estimates also. So it's going to all become more expensive, which also needs to pass town meeting. The more expensive the change, the harder that can be for some to embrace. I'm in favor of a town administrator. I'm trying to figure out how to get it done. But I'm also just, in general, I'm just very concerned about this year's budget. There's a lot of people asking for a lot this year.
Well, just say no. I think one of the selling points to this, if we have to go a full-time treasurer or any type of restructuring from what we had, I remember when we did acquire Nuns Hill, VZ Park, and we had to do a debt exclusion, not a big one. But what sold the day is somebody took an analysis of what that would cost in the budget from a standpoint of how the average tax bill would increase by X amount of dollars. And if someone could do that, I mean, 77,000, 100,000 in today's market sounds like, puts people on edge because people are out of work. There's a lot of financial instability. But if someone could do that type of analysis and say, look, this is going to cost you maybe a cup of coffee a week or whatever it takes, or at least look at it that way and say, this isn't going to really harm the taxpayer.
Well, the good news, John, is that analysis has already been done. I did it, and it's in your budget. The current budget that's in front of Ruth and her committee provides for a $105,000 a year town administrator, which I can tell you is perfectly adequate to get you a decently trained person, probably with a master's degree and 3 to 5 years experience. 75,000 for a treasurer, which that'll get you a good treasurer. It won't get you somebody with 15 years experience, but it'll get you a good one. And an increase in the town accountant's hours I think 5 more hours a week. So all of that, now remember what you had was $130,000 a year chief financial officer and I think around a $50,000 assistant treasurer collector and a treasurer collector clerk. So when you take the old structure and you eliminate it, but you take all the dollars and you put it into the new structure, which the budget has, it's actually not that big a delta. I think it's a delta of about $20,000 that the full-time treasurer collector, assistant treasurer collector, 30-hour a week town accountant, and full-time town administrator, it's only a little bit more money than what you're presently paying for a finance office director and those other positions. So it's really not bad, and that's all done. Now, I told the selectmen when I put that into the budget, if it's the will of the selectmen or the voters to not implement a town administrator form in whatever way you do it, it's very easy to take those dollars in the budget and convert it right back to a finance director assistant type position. So
Okay.
the board can make that decision. And that budget, put it this way, the town budget is balanced. Nantucket Regional Schools assessment is substantially beyond the budget parameter that we created in a balanced budget last November, December, when I presented to the selectmen. And that needs to get modified, and we're working on that right now. But the town budget with this 105 town administrator, treasurer, et cetera, that needed to come in under 3% growth, and it came in at 2.7. So that's all in good shape.
Okay, I'm just looking at ways to sell this at town meeting if we have to go that route.
I agree.
That's why we,
Tough
that's
to
why
sell
we,
though, if the price difference is next to nothing, you're back to just selling the structure of the town.
Yeah,
That's
well,
exactly,
if it's,
that's exactly
Andrew,
right.
if it's
That's what-
20,000, you could just make a gift to the town, write a check.
No, I.
To cover it.
I think it's more than that. The town accountant's asking for a
$23,000
$23,000 raise this year, Kevin.
What's that? I'm sorry?
I said, I think it's more than a couple. The town accountant is asking for a $23,000 raise this year.
That's
The-
that's apart from this proposal. That's got nothing to do with this proposal. She's doing what Sam and a few others did, and they're speaking up for themselves, asking for a raise. And I,
But
unless
to
the
bundle
selectmen
in the town
ask me to
accountant,
comment on
treasurer, and a new, and I don't know, 105 for the administrator. I don't know. And there's we haven't completed going through the budget. I wouldn't say we have a balanced budget right now.
Well, what I'll do for you, in responding to John's
And
question.
I'm stressed out
there-
about our budget this year. If you haven't got that message from me yet through this conversation,
good.
I'm
I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you.
Sure.
That's important.
What I will be happy to do for you,
Very
Joe,
important.
is
Yeah.
get to the committee an analysis of the current structure, which is the CFO and the dependent officers and the town administrator. So you have a side by side, and I think Ruth and the selectmen will find some value in that as well.
Yeah, that would be
I'll
very
I'll prepare
helpful.
that. I'll
I
prepare
I think
that
another thing
tomorrow.
that would be helpful to sell it at town meeting is to quantify how many cities or towns of relatively our size have this old structure who haven't moved on to an administrative. If you say we're the dinosaur left, then I think that's an eye opener.
Well, I think this is what I looked at, I think it was Mass Municipal. There was only 6 or 7 towns that don't have a town administrator or a manager or something like
And
that.
you'd wonder the demographics of those, 6 or 7 towns too, if they're even perhaps smaller than Groveland. One of the
Ruth,
things that
the
we're really
selectmen
running up
asked
against.
for that survey to be done, and we're working on it. And I hope we'll have it for you at the end of the week. And we're not looking at 50 cities and towns. We're looking at basically 10 to 20 that are in your geographic area, to be able to get back to the committee, the finance board and the board of selectmen who charged this study,
If
to
we,
give
if
you
we,
an idea of what's the form of government in the communities around you.
if we could have that side by side, I think it's important for us, but I think even more important for the Board of Selectmen to have it by Monday's meeting, the 15th. That'd be great.
I will try my darndest. I will try my darndest.
Yeah.
Joe,
you.
if you tell me that you think this is critical, I will get it done for you come hell or high water. I got a block of time from 2 to 3 a.m. Thursday night. I can get it done then for you.
Well, a big piece of it is
Thank you.
if you're assuming that we're looking for a collector and not an assistant collector. That's,
Yes, because the law
Well,
requires
I
you to have
understand. I
both.
understand everything that you've already said about the law and the requirements. I'm just saying to make the financial comparisons, that's a piece of it. And, you know, the committee had a different estimate for the administrator than your budget. Kevin, your budget said 105. The
Mhm.
committee had a higher number than that.
Mhm.
So, Joe, you're muted.
You're muted, Joe.
Okay, so yeah, we had a higher number. We're looking, let's take a peek here. Hold on. Survey regional salaries, town administrator 110 to 130.
I wouldn't try to tell you it's
Mm.
bad to pay more because the marketplace for town administrator right now is pretty competitive and it's getting worse because all the old fogies like me, the baby boomers, we started retiring about 4 years ago and there's been a steady trickle and around a lot of qualified people coming in the back end. The good news is Groveland, because it's 6,000 population, would be considered a starter job for town administrator. That's the truth. Now, the good news and the bad news is it would be unusual for you to recruit a town administrator and keep him or her for 30 years. That would be extremely unusual. You're probably going to get somebody, hang on to them for a time, and then they're going to move to bigger salary, bigger community. That's fine. That's the profession. But having said that, to get somebody with an MPA, a Master's in Public Administration, and 3 to 5 years experience, you should be able to get that for 105,000. And I do recruiting, by the way. I'm out there on behalf of town. I just finished the Acushnet, town of Acushnet recruitment this summer. And we brought in a woman who had, about 15 years experience. And she ended up getting paid, I think, 126. She's very
Okay, so
talented, very talented.
So say 105, treasurer collector salary, budgeted
I'd
last
need-
year was
I'd need
55,000.
to look at the budget, Ruth, but I'll do that
I
side by
have it
side.
right here. I'm looking at it. So last year, our treasurer collector salary was 55,000. We never hired the clerk. And then the accountant, say around 65. The other thing is whether or not, and this is, I won't go on, but the other thing is if we're saying full-time treasurer collector and full-time accountant, is there leeway between 30 hours a week and 37 hours a week for full-time?
Full-time in Groveland, excuse me, is defined as 35 hours a week. That's your definition
There
in
goes
your
that
bylaw.
idea. I thought maybe we could scale the hours back a little bit and still consider them full-time, but
Well, the hours are the hours, whatever the town decides you want to have, because
I know, but they look at that as part of their compensation. I mean, the work's really never done in a week's time. I mean, there's always more work to be done and however many hours you're going to fill.
yeah, the hours you had before, your assistant treasurer was 35 hours a week,
Yeah.
and your treasurer collector clerk was 19 hours. So between them, you had 60 hours, and you had, in addition to that, whatever number of hours Denise Dombowski, as the chief financial officer, also gave to the financial function. So you had a very powerful number of hours for the finance component, but you had very little in terms of hours for the town administrator function. And in the time I've been there, 5 months now, it's very obvious to me that the finance part of the operation is being very well done, very professionally, but the town administrator part of the operation was suffering because you didn't have somebody who had the time to do the
We
TA
know, which is
function,
why this committee was convened. So
which I presumed is why you're doing what you're doing now.
I can estimate those numbers. I have actual expenditure for 2020. I have the budget was for 21 and I have the requests for 22. So if you want me to do the first draft of those expenses for those roles, I'll do that and I'll email it to Joe and Kevin tomorrow. How's that sound?
That
That's
sounds
great.
great.
Appreciate it.
That's very
Thank you.
helpful to us, yeah. We're projecting that possibly we will meet as a committee again on March 22nd. We're going to wait for a signal from the Board of Selectmen as to how they want us to proceed. So, but anyways, anything that might be ready for the 15th for them, for their purpose would be helpful as well, assuming that they'll put this issue on the agenda, as I've suggested to Mike Wood. I won't be attending March 15th. If I get invited back, that would be March 29th, so.
Well, if Ruth is doing the first draft of that financial analysis of the two offices,
Good.
then I can concentrate on getting you, the selectmen and the finance board, the comparative form of government and officers in it in the surrounding area, and put my
Great.
time there, and then tweak if I even need to do that, Ruth.
I can play with that too. That's on the the Mass Municipal Database.
Actually, no, because here's the deal. If you want access to the real salary data for town managers and town administrators,
Wouldn't I love that?
you can't get it. It's a confidential document which is available only to town administrators and town managers,
Okay.
and I have it.
And I noticed that I was relegated to just looking at job postings, and then
Yeah.
whatever job posting was out there, I was hoping that the size of the town was similar to ours. It was a very,
So what I can do, Joe, is when I do this survey, I can ask the town administrators for permission to reveal their salary. Now, their salary is a matter of public record, but a lot of town administrators have all kinds of other pay that is common, stipends and things like that. And you've really got to see the full picture in order to get an idea of what the position actually costs, and that's confidential. But we are allowed to give it out if they give permission. So I can ask Mike Gallagher, for instance, I could say, hey, Mike, what's your compensation as TA? And if Mike's willing to say, then I say, geez, you get any stipends as being the CFO, et cetera, et cetera. If he says no, I say, okay, do I have your permission to reveal that? And if he says, yep, then I can put it in the survey. Not everybody is as forthcoming, to be honest, but.
Can I just say one other thing? As far as the surveys go, the surveys I've been seeing include population. I think the budget of the town is meaningful also, because I'm tired of being compared to West Newbury, who certifies $2 million in free cash every year. We cannot be compared to West Newbury. We can't. Or
Absolutely not.
not realistic expectations of our employees to get hired. And then they talk to West Newbury and Merrimack. That's their, and then they say, well, I'm getting paid less and it's not fair. It's not a good comp. It's not a fair comp for us.
What you really want, Ruth, is a statistic which is generated by the MDM-TAB, Mass Data Management Technical Assistance Bureau, which is a division of the Department of Revenue. And they do what's called a comparability study. It's based on, when I last looked at it, which has been a while admittedly, but it's still there. I know it is because a good friend of mine ran that bureau. They use 10 or 15 different factors and they determine the ability to pay of community A, and they put it within a range, and you call them up and say, I'd like the 10 communities that are most compatible with us in terms of ability to pay.
Yeah, I don't
in our
think
geographic area.
West Newbury, Topsfield. I don't think that
Field,
the best
Rowley.
comps for us, or just those communities are the best comps for us. We can't pay it. We can't.
there aren't enough apples out there to compare apples with apples.
It's gotta be somebody else.
Well,
So, anyway, sorry, this was gonna be a 45-minute meeting, Joe, but this is.
okay,
just
yes,
my-
let's get a wrap. Any final comments, Bill, John, anybody? Kevin, thank you again for your
Yeah,
contribution.
I'm gonna check out and leave you good folks to your
We
meeting.
we got some actionables thanks to your contribution again, so thank you.
Sure, of course. I don't know how to get myself, oh, here it is.
Yeah,
Leave.
just,
So good luck and.
Okay, yeah, and I'll look for that work. If you can get it all to us, that would be great, within reason. If you can't do it right away, that's, but
I will, well, with Ruth doing one part of this, and thank you
Yeah.
again, I should be able to get this out for you in the next few days.
thank you so
Okay,
much.
stay well.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
All righty, thank you. All right, Ruth, thank you for sharing some insights.
I just, I feel that the budget's going to be the sticking point at the town meeting.
Yeah, but it is every year and anytime we make any big changes, so.
So I'm just trying to really find a
Yeah.
way to defend it.
I just know that by looking, my simplistic way of looking at things, I didn't see a big difference in what we were gonna pay, the way we were paying before versus what we're gonna pay now. But I am inclined to believe it's still gonna be a little on the high end scale because the job market really is very tight. So even with an entry level town administrator, yeah, I think Kevin's numbers are, I'm hopeful, but I would be more surprised if we don't lean a little bit towards the middle, towards the right of those numbers. So at the end of the day, the Board of Selectmen are going to want to make things work and they're going to look for quality. And this is a board, I think all the boards in our town have always made sure that we're putting quality people in charge. So, and that's going to cost us a little bit more. So we'll see. Any other questions or comments? And otherwise we'll get a wrap at close to 7 o'clock here.
Cheryl,
Yes.
it's Betty.
Hi, Betty.
I am so pleased that Ruth is there this evening.
Thank you, Betty.
She knows the people. She's been here a very long time. And no, we can't be compared to West Newbury and some of these other towns that have similar populations, but have very different spending habits. So I didn't know that Ruth was there but as I listened, I was very happy to hear from her.
Well, I'm glad she accepted my invitation because at this point, after voting on this document now,
Poor Joe got a rogue text from me today and he invited me.
more of this now for us, for all of us, is going to be all about numbers now, numbers.
And these numbers can take me 5 minutes. I have all of this right here. For
Yeah.
Kevin to say this was going to be a whole study.
Yeah. But
You can do it, Ruth.
Bill, in respect to you, this really addresses what you and also Ed Watson needed to know. And this is what we've discussed tonight and what we need to discuss over the next 2 meetings, meaning the 15th of March for you guys and March 29th if I come back. So now it's all.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a tight
I
market.
think-
I wouldn't want to be in your shoes right now. It's going to be a son of a gun to get quality people in and we can afford.
Well, you never know, right? Sometimes you go out fishing, you never know what you're gonna catch, right? You
Exactly.
toss the line in the water and you
Yeah.
kind of say a couple of prayers and you hope you catch the big one.
But I think the interim solution's been very expensive for us. What we're paying for that
The solution is
temporary
killing
treasurer
us.
is,
It's killing us. Are you kidding me? When every time he said $2,500, I want to cringe because I know this is killing me.
I know,
We need to
Bill.
extract ourselves from this as quickly as
which is
possible.
why I really want to move this forward.
So do I, because the faster we move this forward and get it over the goal, is the
Goal line,
quicker we
that's
get rid of this. We move ourselves away on from Kevin. We move ourselves on from this a very expensive interim treasurer collector we have. It's not a very good form right now. It's not. We're not doing we're not doing very well by the people. You know what I mean? And it's just a combination of things that just fell apart, and we thought we had someone.
Yeah, and Kathy, all the board.
We hung up, I think, before Kevin came on.
Yeah, I'm glad that Bill and Kathy were on. They're very financially
Absolutely.
oriented.
Absolutely.
So yeah, all good, all good. I mean, we're heading in the right direction. I remain very hopeful and I'm very much fully engaged with all of you. So our charge will continue to some degree based on the signals that we get from the Board of Selectmen as to how they want us to finish this off or to make modifications. But again, we've approved 2 documents tonight, and I hope the Board of Selectmen will seriously consider what we put into those documents. At the end of the day, with all the advice that we've received and we continue to receive and share with each other, I still think that we need to significantly default to the auditors and the town council within a week or 2. They should be looking at these documents that I just transmitted to Mike during the meeting.
Yeah, and if it's more than an hour's of anyone's work, I'd be amazed. I mean, these aren't lengthy documents that anybody's had to read
That's a
through.
good point. That's a good point. This
Sure,
has been
financial
difficult
background.
for us, but to some degree, and it's taken us a while to produce it, but, I'm very thankful for our committee members. John Christopher, John Osborne did a lot of the writing. I did some writing. We went back and forth and we talked to people. So I think we did the best that we could do to support you, Bill, and the Board of Selectmen. That's our default here. We're here to serve you first, and then the town. So.
No, I know. Now it's our job to take that baton from you and push it across the goal.
There you go.
And that's why, I'm looking now at not selling the cost, selling the benefits.
Yeah.
What are the benefits to us? It's an enhanced form of government. It's a more responsive form of government. You don't have to wait 2 weeks. You're going to get some answers. I think that's the way we need to approach it. What are the benefits to you, the citizen out there, not just the voter, but the citizen out there in Groveland? These are the benefits to you.
All of that while showing a understanding of the cost.
Sure, and I'll take a copy of those. I have a pretty good idea. I work up the same things. I'm always after Kevin. Send me the Excel spreadsheet. Send me the Excel spreadsheet. I like to
Yeah, I'll
finagle my own numbers, but
everybody on this call, when I get whatever I get from Kevin and Ruth, I'm going to share with everybody on this call. No problem. So let
Can
me
I
go
make
around
one comment, Joe?
let me go around the table to wrap up. John, you final comments, questions, concerns?
This is more directed at Ruth and Bill, because I am not a financial person at all. But I was in earnest about, and Kevin never really addressed the question. I'd like to see if there's a difference of $35,000 or $40,000 in making the switch over. There has to be a formula where you can say if your average assessment is $400,000 and the tax rate is X,
Yeah.
how much is that going to cost me on a monthly basis on my tax bill? If we can show that this may be the cost of an ice cream sundae for everybody.
Right.
That's a much bigger selling point than to say, oh, we're going to increase the budget by 50,000. I don't know if that's possible. We did it.
Well, yeah,
20
we
years
could
ago.
do that, but that's it. My thinking is that's more like for an override. My thinking is that this needs to be absorbed within the budget. So it's at the cost of what else our townspeople need and want. It's going to be at the cost of the new van for the Council on Aging. It's going to be at the cost of the police cruiser. It's going to be at the cost of the town clerk wants an assistant. Everybody asked for a 20% pay increase because Denise wasn't here to tell them they can't do that. So that's the other thing. That's going to be in the document going to town meeting. There's going to be what the department requested and what we're suggesting. And there's going to be huge differences in those numbers, which is going to be concerning. So I hear you, John, and I think that's a good point that, this is not an expensive change and it's a necessary change, but within the constraints of the budget that we have, it could be difficult. And we
No,
need,
it may be impossible in it, given the climate, but
Right.
and Kevin says we can take money from stabilization and I'm against that, but I'll take that up separately with Bill and the Board of Selectmen.
I'm against it too. I'm looking for other alternatives before we raid the piggy bank.
I remember taking a whole pile of money to settle that lawsuit with the Haverhill dump
Absolutely.
many years ago. And,
Yeah.
other than OPED, I think that we've done a good job rebuilding that. So
We've worked really hard for the last,
that's hallowed ground. I don't think that we haven't reached the disaster yet where we need to tap into that.
The
right.
unfortunate part is we find ourselves in the middle of a pandemic still. And
Yeah.
that's going to affect the revenues for a time to come. I mean, that's
So
just.
let me
the
ask you,
reality.
is local aid projected to be less?
I believe we're projecting it to be 10% less.
Okay,
Well, according to
That's-
that latest legislation passed by Congress, needed to be signed, all the cities and towns and states are gonna get some money out of it. We don't know how much, but
we don't know.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's there, but I hope it's not as difficult as it was to get the CARES Act, where we have to submit tremendous amount of documentation ahead of time to find out
Yeah.
if we're even gonna get reimbursed. And by that time, you can't find the supplies anymore because somebody else beat you to it. So it's really, it was a cluster. I hope they do a better job rolling it out to where it's more fair, it's more accurate, and it's easier to access those funds.
Well,
Okay.
let me start off with our guests. Ruth, any final comments?
You all have my support. Thank you for your time.
Great, we're gonna invite you at our next meeting.
We have vacancies on the finance board. Tell all your friends if anybody wants to come. It's an all-women committee right now.
Love it.
Bring it on.
Plenty of ad hoc participants available on the Board of Selectmen to step in. Bill, any final comments, questions?
No, I think you've done a great job. I just, now it's our turn. We've got to
Great.
make this happen.
Thank you. Andrew?
Just seems like we gotta sell the value, the cost of the change versus what we're gonna get for that money. I mean, that's ultimately what everybody balances in their personal finances as well as towns and all forms of government, you would hope. So just push the value. I'm like anybody else. I don't like more taxes, but something like this, a long-term change, a long-term stability and structure of the town, I think it's worth the value.
Betty? Thank you, Andrew.
I'm just pleased that we had so many voices and so many opinions and a lot to think about. And I'm always a fiscal conservative, so, you know, there are needs and there are wants. So let's do the best we can for the community. And
Thank you. Mike, Dempsey?
Yeah, I just quickly, but I think people are underestimating how much Groveland is growing. It's a very competitive environment. We're competing with a lot of other towns, and I think we need to make sure the finance board takes that into account. Services are more and more required.
Yeah, and I think this whole package that we're presenting here, the town administrator with the so-called financial team, I mean, that's like the core of this town, in my opinion. I mean, it's so important that we get that part right. You know, we're handling, 3 people handling $20 million. We have we're tied into a very large school district. I mean, it's complicated, and we got to get this right. So. Good
Yeah,
point.
the budget
Good
would
point.
be
We're
the
growing
same.
like crazy. I mean, this town is just a building boom is unbelievable when you think about it.
absolutely, look all around.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Betty, what were you saying?
No, when we were there, I think it was an $11 million budget.
Yeah. Budget has grown. My goodness.
It has.
But not exponentially with the population. That's
No.
what's startling. So if you break it down per capita, it's astounding. If you do it in a very simplistic way. We haven't gone from 4,000 people to 7. We went from
Still about the same.
5,800 to 62, and the budget grew by exponentially, well, doubled. Seems like so. Who else?
Yeah.
We've covered everybody here. So.
okay. Well, I'd like to thank particularly Ruth and Bill for being here tonight.
Oh,
and-
absolutely.
Oh, thank you guys.
Yeah. and-
No, thank you.
I have been
Don't
watching,
thank
like I
me.
said.
Well,
I
at least
didn't-
it's nice to know that we have people in the Board of Selectmen that are going to go to bat for us. And
Well, listen, you guys have gone to bat for me for the last 6 months. That's the absolute least I can do at this point, John. The least.
appreciate it.
Thank you. And like I said, we'll be there in support, but we can't be the main presenters here. So I think you guys will embrace it if you vote on it, move forward with whatever modifications would need to be made between now and then. We'll support you. So
I know most of us embrace it.
it's okay. Well, you have to vote. That's what we have boards for, committees, and That's what votes are for, so.
That's why democracy.
Very good. Thank you again, everyone. Be well, be safe, and I'll keep everybody posted as to what the next steps will be.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let me know
Thank you. Thank you.
whenever
Good
I
night,
can lend a
everyone.
hand.
Bye-bye.
Okay, good night.
Bye-bye. Oops, let me make sure that I have it. Stop the recording.